So next reading is currency management and introduction. This reading would again be focused on an introduction, and all the strategies that you are introduced to in this reading would be applied and would be discussed in detail in the later readings. So here you will be given an introduction to different strategies and uh, different tools that you can use for currency management, or different factors to look at, and then their application would be discussed in detail in later readings mostly. So starting with currency management. So before, why is currency management important? Because currency risk can impact your returns. So for example, if you have invested into some other country, or if into an international market, you would have invested into a different currency, and as the exchange rate changes, your return will change. So that means currency effective management of currency risk is the key to superior performance of global portfolio, because currency changes or currency movement are an important component in that scenario. So starting with understanding or the foreign exchange concepts, or review of foreign exchange concept, again nothing very new here, same what you have just learned in level 1, 2 and 2. So there are different types of markets in foreign with respect to foreign exchange. So there can be spot markets. What is a spot market? A spot market is a market in which you do the spot transaction. That is, if I sell or buy any dollar or any rupee or anything, any currency today, then that is a spot market transaction. That is, I am doing the transaction on the spot. Moving further, there can be currency codes. What are currency codes? So there can be a different code that is generally used in the market for a currency. So like for example, for US dollar, the code is USD. For Pakistani rupee, the code is PKR. For Euro, code is EUR. When we talk about currency exchange rate, the exchange rate can be told with respect to a price currency and base currency. How? So if I tell you that 1 USD is equal to 100 PKR, so it is like 100 PKR to 1 USD. So exchange rate is 100 PKR to 1 USD. So there is a price currency and there is a base currency. Price currency is the currency in numerator, and base currency is the currency in denominator. So whenever we are looking at buying or selling, we are usually looking at it from the perspective of base currency. Most spot currency codes are priced out to 4 decimal places. Spot exchange rate is usually for settlement on the second business day. So this is important. Remember that spot exchange rate is usually settled on T plus 2 basis. That is second business day after the trade date. There is a bid price and there is a spot price, also known as bid price and offer price, or bid price and not spot, this is ask price. So bid price and ask price, also known as offer price. So what is the bid price? Bid price is the price at which dealer is willing and able to buy from you, and ask price is the price at which dealer is willing and able to sell to you. So this is from dealer's perspective. How does dealer make money? So dealer make money on the difference between bid and spot and ask price. So ask price will be higher than bid price. So dealer would buy at a lower price from you and would sell it to someone else at a higher price. And this difference between bid and ask is known as bid ask spread, and this spread is the dealer's income. So dealer earns from this spread, that is ask minus bid price. Which currency will be quoted as base currency in general? So in general, euro is quoted as base currency if it is there in the currency pair. Currency pairs involving GBP other than euro will use GBP as base currency. So if GBP is there and euro is not there, then GBP will be used as base currency. So there can be deviations from it. This is the generally used currency pairs or generally used conventions that you are told. 12 currency pairs involving either the AUD or NZD will use these currencies as the base currency. For example, USD to AUD, NZD to AUD. The market convention between AUD and NZD is that AUD is used as base currency, that is Australian dollar is used as base currency if you are quoting Australian dollar and New Zealand dollar. Then from these two, Australian dollar is used as base currency. All other currency codes involving US dollar will use US dollar as the base currency. So these are general conventions that are used. Obviously there are deviations to it, but generally this is how currencies are quoted. This is just to give you an overview of the foreign exchange market and how they operate and what are the different terms or structures that you need to know of. So moving on from spot markets, another type of market can be forward market. That is the market for forward contracts. What is a forward contract? Forward contract is a contract in which you lock in a rate for future. That is, if instead of buying today, I lock a rate for future after 1 month, 2 months or whatever, that is a forward rate. Or the market for that forward contract is known as forward market. So forward rate can be higher or lower compared to spot rate. If currency is expected to appreciate, it will be higher. If currency is expected to depreciate, it will be lower. The difference between forward rate and spot rate is known as forward points. So if currency is expected to appreciate, forward rate will be higher. If forward rate is higher, these points will be in positive. So that will be known as forward premium. If forward rate is lower compared to spot rate, that will be known as forward discount. So it can be positive or it can be negative. Now currencies are generally in up to 4 decimal places. So as they are generally up to 4 decimal places, the difference that you get in forward rate and spot rate would be very low or would be in 4 decimal places as well. So in order to make it more readable or in order to convert it into forward point, what you do is you multiply that by 10,000. So when you multiply 10,000 with this difference, you will get your forward point. Or if you have forward point, you can divide it by 10,000 to calculate the actual impact or actual difference. Forward contracts generally have longer than T plus 2 settlement. So spot market have T plus 2 settlement. They may have longer than T plus 2 settlement. So now the question is that you have a bid price and you have an ask price. So if you are talking about a forward rate, then should you take bid price or should you take ask price? Similarly, your forward points would also be different. So forward points would again be in bid forward points and ask forward points form. So if you are talking about forward rate, should you add forward points bid or ask, and should you select spot rate as bid or ask? The question is that which rate should you select? So if you are selling base currency, what does it mean? So if you are planning to sell base currency, what does it mean? When you sell base currency, dealer will buy it, right? And when dealer buys it, what rate would dealer use? Dealer would use a bid rate. So that means if you are planning to sell base currency, you will take bid, spot rate and bid forward point. If you are planning to buy currency, then you will take ask spot rate and ask forward point to come up with forward rate. Moving on, forward rate is constant. So if you have logged in a forward rate, that will remain be there. So for example, if I have logged in 105 rupees, 105 PKR to US dollar, it will remain constant. I will be able to transact on it at the end of or at the expiry of forward contract, or I will have to transact on it at the expiry of contract. But throughout the life of that forward contract, let's say it is a 1 month contract. So here I know I can receive 105 rate. Throughout the life, exchange rate will be changing. And as exchange rate changing, this position can be beneficial for me or can be a loss for me. So it can turn out to be a gain or it can turn out to be a loss. So at any point of time, I can find out whether this position is a gain or a loss. How? I can calculate gain or loss here using current market rates, and then I can calculate the present value of gain or loss. Through that, I can find out whether I am at a positive position, at a gain position or a loss position as of now. This is known as marking to market or mark to market valuation. That is calculating the value of forward contract as of today. How do you do this? You calculate the estimate, the forecast the gain or loss at expiry and calculate the present value of gain or loss. And you discount it using risk-free rate. Why? Because derivative discounting is done using risk-free rates. At the initiation of forward contract, mark to market value will be 0. No, there will be no exchange of cash flows. Why 0? Because you will set the forward rate based on the expectations as of today at no loss, no gain position. But then as your expectations change or as the market movements change, or if market is not moving up to the expectations, then you will arrive at a gain or loss position. And for that you can mark to market. And here is an example. You bought 10 million GBP for delivery against AUD in 6 months. So that means you have bought GBP 10 million for delivery against AUD in 6 months at forward rate 1.61. 3 months have passed. Spot rate of AUD to GBP is this. 3-month points are 130 and 140. That means your logged in forward rate is 1.61. That is for 6 months. But now you have passed 3 months, so you are here at the middle. And now you know that forward rate expectations have changed. What are the new forward rates? New forward rates are 1.6210 plus 130 and 1.6215 plus 140. That is spot rate plus forward points. So what is the forward rate today? Forward rate today is this plus this and this plus this. Which forward rate would you take? So you have to deliver GBP against AUD in future. So when you have to deliver GBP, that means you will be selling GBP forward, and when you sell it, the dealer is buying it. The dealer wouldn't be actually buying it, but just to set the context, when you sell it, dealer will be buying it. So when he buys it, at what rate would he buy it? He would use the bid rate. So that means you will select the bid rate 1.6210 and bid forward point 130. So what is the forward rate that you come up to? 1.6340. So that means this is a 6-month contract. You are currently standing here at 3 months. Here the value was 0. Why? Because present value of future gain and loss was 0. But you have logged a rate, and you logged a rate of 1.61. 1.61. But now you know that the rate is 1.634. That means you are either have a gain or have a loss. So what is the gain or loss? Gain or loss is the difference. And what is the difference? It is 1.634 minus 1.61. So that means you will have a gain or loss of 1.634 minus 1.61 here. So previously you could sell GBP or you could buy AUD. Previously you could buy AUD for 1.61 GBP. Now you will buy AUD at, previously you could give 1 GBP, or you could give 1 GBP for getting 1.61 AUD. Now you can give 1 GBP using getting 1.634 AUD. That means you are getting more AUDs. Previously you were getting less, but now you are getting more. So this is a benefit to you. So this difference would be a gain to you. So what is the gain? 1.64 minus 1.61. And what is the total size of the position? Total size is 10 million GBP. This is the gain per GBP. And if you multiply it by 10 million GBP, you will get total gain. So total gain will be 240,000 AUD. When will this gain happen? This gain will occur here at this point of time. That is 240,000 AUD. What is its present value? You can discount it back 3 months. How do you discount it back? This is AUD. So you discount it back using interest rate on AUD or interest rate in Australia. When you discount it back 3 months using interest rate in Australia, it will give you present value, that is 237,154. This is the present value of payout, or this is the marking to market, or this is the mark to market value of forward contract. So first step, state the rate that you have locked. Second step, this 1.61. Second step, come up with the rate that should be there, or that is available currently in the market, or that is based on current market expectations and spot rates. Third step, calculate the difference. Fourth step, calculate the full value by multiplying it with the number of shares that you have locked to, that you have in the contract. And fifth step, calculating the present value. This is fourth, and fifth step is calculating the present value. This is how you do mark to market. Any confusion in this? Okay, moving. So this is about forward market. Moving on, next is FX swap markets. So what is a swap? Swap is an exchange of cash flows. So base currency is being bought and spot on spot and sold forward, or base currency is being sold on spot and bought forward. What does it mean? This means that we have a series of contracts, or we have a series of transactions that consist of offsetting and simultaneous spot and forward transaction. That is, for example, if I have a buy spot transaction, then I am offsetting it with a forward sell transaction, and if I have a forward buy transaction, then I am offsetting it with a spot sell transaction. So two legs of swap can either be of equal size, that is known as match swap. So if I am equalizing the size, that is whatever is paying out should be received. If the size is equal, that is known as match swap. Or one can be larger than the other, that is known as mismatched swap. A common spot rate exchange rate is typically applied to both the legs. The standard practice to use mid-market spot rate for match swap transactions. So if this is a match swap, remember what you do is when you have bid and ask rates and you know it is a match swap, so you will use the average of bid and ask instead of using bid or ask. No matter what the position is, on both the positions you will use average rate if it is a match swap. If it is not a match swap, then you will use the same logic that we discussed previously in forward contract. That is, you will decide it based on the position. However, forward point will still be based on either bid or offer. So you will use spot rate as average, but you will use forward points based on bid or offer if it is a matched swap. If it is an unmatched swap, then you use offer side spot rate for long position in base currency and you use bid rate for short position in base currency. If you are selling base currency, dealer will be buying it, so you will use bid rate, and if you are buying base currency, then dealer will be selling it, so you should use offer rate like we did in previous example. So in mismatch swap, that same concept will be applied that we did previously, but in match swap, spot rate will be average, but forward points will be based on bid or offer. So remember these conventions. This is how it will be in questions. So do not get confused when you see these differentiations in questions. FX swaps involve an exchange of principal amount. So what is the difference between general FX swap and these currency swap that we are discussing? So FX swap involve an exchange of principal amounts in different currencies at swap initiation, that is reversed at swap maturity. That is, you exchange amount today and then at maturity you reverse it or exchange amount again, and then you enter into another contract, and this is how you keep doing it at all the maturities. That is, exchange is happening. While in currency swap, this is not the case. In currency swap, what happens is, so this is foreign exchange swap. In simple currency swap, what happens is that you are exchanging the interest payments, but you are not exchanging the notational amounts. So in currency swaps, you do not exchange the notational amount. You are only exchanging the series of interest payment. Interest on, for example, USD and interest on Euro. In FX swaps, you are actually changing the currency. That is, you are trying to hedge the actual currency movement. So FX swaps have no interim interest payment unlike currency swap, and are nearly always of much shorter term than currency swap, because they are not hedging the differences in interest rates or borrowing rates or lending rates. They are hedging the changes in currency exchange rate. So these are the difference between currency swap and FX swap. All this will come in later in detail in later readings and derivatives and other topics. Currency options. So we have discussed forward markets, we have discussed spot markets, we have discussed forward markets, we have discussed swap markets, and now next is options. So what are the options? Option is an option to buy or sell a specific currency. So there can be call options or there can be put options, that are the most common options. Apart from that, there can be more complex options that are known as exotic options, that will again come in later. So for now, just know there can be call, there can be put, or there can be combination of these, and or combination of these can be used to make some other options that are known as exotic options. So this is a review of exchange, foreign exchange concepts or foreign exchange market. Going on, currency risk and portfolio return and risk. So when we talk about an international investment, let's say that you are in US, an investor in US, and you are investing in Europe. That is, you are from US, though your domestic current country is US, but you are taking your money to Europe and you are investing in Europe. So your investment currency is, or foreign currency is, euro. So let's say that you are getting 5%, 10% return on the investment in euro. Is it the return to you to your portfolio? No, this is not the return. Why? Because this is in euro. Your portfolio, your investment, or you are looking at the investment from the point of view of US dollar or from the perspective of US dollar. So that means you wouldn't only look at the return in foreign currency. This is your return in foreign currency. But you will also look at the depreciation of currency against the local currency. So if it is giving you 10% return, but if it gets depreciated, then your net return will be lower. On the other hand, if it gets appreciated, your net return will be higher. So that means when you are analyzing the return for international investment, you should consider both the components, foreign currency return and the movement in exchange rate. So you should add both the components. Let's say movement is exchange rate is 2% appreciation. So your total return will be 12%. So how do you account for it? So you can simply account for it using this formula. That is 1 plus foreign currency return multiplied by 1 plus foreign exchange changes minus 1. Or if you just do add it like this will give you an approximate answer. So an approximate number can be taken doing directly the foreign currency return plus FX changes, or you can take the actual, calculate the actual number using this formula, whatever the requirement is. And if this is a portfolio, then you will do it for first security, let's say A, multiply it by weight. Then you do the same for second security, multiply it by weight. Then you do it for third security and multiply it by weight, and so on. And you sum up all of these to come up with total return in domestic currency. So return in domestic currency would consider two factors: return in foreign currency and change in foreign exchange rate. Any confusion so far? So this is how you can decompose the foreign return into return coming in from foreign currency investment and the return being impacted or coming from changes in foreign exchange rate. You can also decompose volatility similarly. So your domestic currency return is 1 plus foreign currency into 1 plus FX minus 1. Or it can be, if you transform the equation, it will come in to be equal to RFC RFX plus RFC into RFX. Or as I told you, you can take an approximate number. Your approximation would be foreign currency return plus your foreign exchange rate movement. Now the question is that how do you calculate the volatility? So remember, for two asset portfolio, we used to have a formula for volatility, that variance of portfolio is equal to variance of asset A plus variance of asset B plus 2 into standard deviation of asset A into standard deviation of asset B into correlation of there is also used to be W1 and W2 here. So this correlation of A and B and multiplied by W1 and W2, that is weight of A into weight of B, and again this is also multiplied by weight squared of A and weight squared of B. So that same formula can be used in this case again. So what you can do is you can take both of these, that is as separate asset, consider both of these as separate asset. So you can consider foreign currency return as one asset, and you can consider return from changes in FX as another asset. So you can do it using the same formula, and in the same formula you can put RFC and RFX as different assets. And when you do this, you can simplify the formula. You can use this formula, that is variance of x plus y into their respective weights is equal to weight squared into variance of x plus weight squared into variance of y. What is x here? X here would be, let's say, foreign currency return. And what is y here? Y here would be, let's say, foreign currency exchange rate. And so you can put in these two as different assets and you can arrive at this formula, or you can further simplify this formula. How? That is, you can use an approximation. So this will give you an approximate variance in domestic currency. That is, you can further remove the weights and calculate the total variance of domestic currency removing the weight, and this will be the formula that you will have, and this will give you an approximate number for the same. So formula is same, nothing new. Only difference is that you are taking this as different and this as a different asset. And when you do this, you can come up with required standard deviation for return on domestic currency for a particular asset. Let's say asset is A, and you can do the same for asset B and come up with the standard deviation for return in domestic currency for asset B. And then you can use this as one asset and this as another asset, and then you can use these two returns volatilities to come up with portfolio variance using the same formula. Now this will become your asset, let's say X, and this will become your asset Y. So this is how you can do it. Obviously formulas will get complex and it will be a complex calculation, but this is how you can do it. So estimating forecasted variance of currency portfolio can be challenging because it potentially involves a large number of variables, and also because historical price patterns are always a good are not always a good guide to future price behavior. Hence, to calculate the expected future risk of the foreign exchange portfolio, the portfolio manager would need a market opinion about variance of FX movements and expected correlations of variables. Because as you cannot rely on past correlation and past variances, so you will need some opinion about the future expectations of variance and correlations. Due to these reasons, it is complex. Also, there will be a lot of variables that you need to manage, so it will be complex. But this is how you can do it, or you can come up with volatility decomposition. Moving on, currency management strategic decisions. So what do we mean by currency management strategic decision? So sometimes you may want to hedge the currency risk. Why hedge the currency risk? Because you think that this will impact your return, so you would want to hedge it. But sometimes you may think that currency movements may provide you a benefit, so in that case you may not want to hedge the currency risk. So there can be both the cases. You may want to hedge it or you may not want to hedge it, or you may want to hedge it up to a certain extent, and even if you hedge it, there would be certain costs that you will incur to hedge it. So maybe at times you are able to incur those costs, maybe, or maybe those costs are very high and do not want to incur it. So decisions with respect to deciding how much to hedge, how much not to, or what, when to hedge, when not to, or should you hedge or should you not hedge, those decisions are known as strategic decisions with respect to currency management. And the approach to decide for currency management can depend on variety of factors. That can depend on objectives, investment constraints, and beliefs about currency markets. If your objective is to reduce risk, or if your objective is to or if you have a constraint of low risk, then you may need to want to hedge the currency movements. But if you think that currency markets will do good in future, or you will have a benefit from currency movement, then you may not want to hedge it. So there are different thoughts and theories about it. One camp of thought says that you should not hedge it. Why? Because they say that in the long run, currency effects will cancel out to zero. That currency exchange rate will mean revert in the long run. If it is going up, it will fall in future. And so you do not need to hedge it. So for long run, your impact of currency movement will be zero. And so your domestic currency return will be your foreign currency return. So do not invest into or do not incur cost or expenses into hedging. That is one camp of thought. Another camp of thought says that currency movements can have a dramatic impact on short-term returns and return volatility. And pricing inefficiencies exist in currency markets. So in short-term, currency may be overvalued or undervalued, or there can be significant movements in the currency. that can end up impacting your return and risk profile. Much of the flow in currency markets is related to international trade or capital flows, where trading is need driven. Some participants are not profit oriented, and so are maybe uninformed traders. Speculative capital seeking to arbitrage inefficiencies is finite. So what they say is that currency may not trade at its fair value, and it may deviate significantly from the fair value. Why? Because there might be some uninformed traders who are trading without the information about the, or who have to trade even if it is undervalued or overvalued. There might be certain movements that are driven by capital flows or international trade. International trade is need driven, and as long as there is a need, it will remain be there, no matter if currency is overvalued or undervalued. And arbitrage opportunities maybe, uh, and capital seeking to arbitrage inefficiencies is finite. Maybe you are not able to exploit arbitrage opportunities. So due to these reasons, currency may remain deviated in, at least in short term, or may be very volatile compared to fair values. And so for that reason, this can impact your return, and you should either hedge it or prepare for it, whatever. So moving on with respect to currency strategic decisions. So what are the factors that influence your decision? Factors are investment objectives, investment constraints, and beliefs. So starting with the objective, that is IPS. Currency risk management policy will usually address such issues as the target portion of currency exposure, that how much should you be hedging or how much should you not be hedging. Latitude for active currency management around this target, that how much can you actively manage around the target. So let's say you say that I will manage it up to, I will keep 80% hedged, and within this 80% I can have a latitude in which I can allow active management, like 85% or 75. I can change it to 85 or 75, or there can be a bound. Frequency of hedge rebalancing, that if you are hedging, if you want to keep 80% hedge, then this hedge can change over time. So you have hedged it 80% as of now, but now as currency move, maybe after 1 month it becomes only 75% hedge. So how frequent should you rebalance? Currency hedge performance benchmark to be used, that how do you decide whether your currency is hedged or not, or how much is it hedged? What is the benchmark? Hedging tools permitted. For example, should you use forward, option contracts, or other tools which are permitted and which are not permitted? These are the elements that are generally defined in IPS to help with currency management, or to provide boundaries or direction for currency management. So this is about IPS. Moving on to the next part, that is portfolio optimization. So what do we mean by portfolio optimization? Portfolio optimization is optimization of a multi-currency portfolio. What do we mean by that? It involves selecting weights that locate portfolio on the efficient frontier. That is ensuring that your portfolio is on the efficient frontier. And how do you ensure it is on the efficient frontier? When you select the weights that locate portfolio on the efficient frontier with risk and returns defined in terms of domestic currency. So you would have an efficient frontier that would define the risk and returns in terms of domestic currency. So we will need to check, see whether your portfolio of international investment or foreign investment is falling on this efficient frontier or not. So you will assign it the weights that make it fall on the efficient frontier. And if it is not falling on the efficient frontier, then it is not optimized, or it is not optimal. So you will define weights that make it fall on the efficient frontier, and that will be an optimal portfolio then. However, it can be difficult and complex to jointly optimize all of the exposures. So portfolio may have different exposures, and it will be difficult to define to optimize all the exposures. So in real world, many portfolio managers handle asset allocation with currency risk as a two-step process. So what do? They divide it into two steps. First is portfolio optimization over fully hedged return. That is, they assume that you are fully hedging the portfolio, and so they decide that what will be the optimization point if you are fully hedging it. And second is selection of active currency exposure. Then once they have decided the allocation that is there for fully hedged portfolio, then they decide that how much of it can be actively managed, or what exposure can be kept for active management, 10%, 5%, or whatever. This is how currency management is generally done as a two-step process. That is portfolio optimization over fully hedged returns and then selection of active currency exposure. Derivatives allow the price risk and exchange rate risk of foreign currency assets to be unbundled and managed separately. If the currency exposures of foreign assets could be perfectly and costlessly hedged. So how do you do your hedging? So you can use derivatives for hedging. So one method is that you can buy or sell currency. So for example, if I have a currency, I can take an offsetting position in that currency to hedge the risk. But that would require more cost, more capital, and that would not be easy. So another way is using derivatives. That is, I take an offsetting position using a derivative, a forward contract or an option. In that case, I wouldn't need to pay the whole amount as of now. So derivatives can help hedge the risk, but again, derivatives may come at cost, or any hedging instrument may come at a cost. So if there are no hedging costs that and foreign assets can be perfectly hedged, then your domestic currency return will be foreign currency return, given that there are no cost for hedging and you can perfectly hedge it. So if you can perfectly hedge it, you will perfectly hedge it, and if there are no costs, there wouldn't be additional costs, so your domestic currency return will be equal to foreign currency return. There wouldn't be any impact from FX because you have completely hedged it. And also your variance of domestic currency will be equal to variance of foreign currency return without any difference coming in from change in movement in currency, because movement in currency is completely hedged. But this is only possible if hedging is costless, one, and second, if you have enough instruments available to perfectly hedge it. That is not the case in real world environment. So moving on further with currency management. So as I told you that you need to decide how much currency exposure you need to take, whether you want it completely hedged or you want it semi-hedged, or how much do you want to manage actively. How do you decide it, or how do you choose it? You can decide it using different considerations. There can be diversification consideration and there can be cost consideration. That is, you may want to hedge or not hedge to keep your portfolio diversified, or you may want to hedge or not hedge to save your costs. What are diversification considerations? Diversification considerations can include time horizon, liquidity needs, asset composition, and market condition. And what do we mean by that? So if you have a long time horizon, then generally the assumption is that currency will mean revert. And if you think over that time horizon currency will mean revert, then there is no benefit of hedging. And if there is no benefit of hedging, there is no point investing cost or investing amount into hedging or incurring hedging cost. So in that case, in long term time horizon, you generally do not want to hedge or want to reduce the hedging exposure, a hedging portion, or want to actively manage. With respect to liquidity needs, if you require liquidation of foreign currency assets, then you may want to hedge. Why? Because if you want to liquidate it, you do not know that, let's say you want to liquidate it after 2 or 3 months. So you do not know that at that point of time what will be the exchange rate. And maybe the exchange rate is disadvantageous, but still you have to liquidate. Why? Because you have a liquidity need. So if you have immediate liquidity needs, then you may want to hedge a higher portion. Asset composition. So if your foreign currency return has negative correlation with FX improvement, that means you have diversification benefit. That is, even if you are having a negative movement here, then foreign currency return will be higher to offset that. In that case, you have a natural hedge and you have diversification benefits from keeping it unhedged. So you wouldn't want to hedge. So your hedge ratio will be lower. So for example, correlation between FX and fixed income return tends to be higher compared to equity. So if you are if you are investing into foreign currency fixed income, then you may not want to, then you may want to hedge it. Why? Because you know that both of these move in the same direction. That is, if FX return goes down, fixed income return will also go down. So you need to hedge it. But if you are keeping equity in foreign currency investment, you know that foreign exchange rate and equity would have low correlation or negative correlation. In that case, you have diversification benefits. So in that case, you want to keep the hedge ratio lower. So high hedge ratio if you are investing in fixed income generally, and low if you are investing in equity generally. But then again, market conditions are also important. So maybe due to different market conditions or due to current market conditions, you think that fixed income and FX rate have low correlation or negative correlation. In that case, you wouldn't want to hedge your fixed income exposure. So these are the factors that can impact your decision for hedging. Moving on to cost consideration. With respect to cost, there can be two types of cost: trading and opportunity. Trading costs relate to any cost with respect to trading. For example, bid offer spread. If spread is high, that means cost is high. If spread is wide, cost is high. Some hedges involve currency options, and when you buy the option, you need to pay a price or a premium for it. Forward contracts. So forward contracts do not have a cost. You can enter into a forward contract without a cost. That is, you do not need to pay something like option. But still, when forward contract expired, you will have to roll over it. Like in swap, you have a series of forward contracts that are rolled over periodically. So when you roll it over, there will be a cash transaction, and that cash transaction or the value of forward contract at that point of time can lead to cost. Need to maintain an administrative infrastructure for trading, that is another trading cost. That is, you need to have administrative structure, you need to have a front man, middleman, back office operations, and this will add to your overhead cost. What is opportunity cost? Missing the returns from advantageous currency movements due to keeping portfolios completely hedged. So if you are keeping a portfolio completely hedged, then you have removed the risk associated with currency movement. But then again, if the currency movement was advantageous, that is a move to give you higher return, then you would forego that return as well. So that means hedging can help you reduce it, but at the same time, there might be opportunity cost of losing the advantageous return. So these are cost considerations that you need to take, and these are diversification considerations. Based on that, you will decide whether hedge ratio should be high or low. So if you are given these factors, based on these factors or based on an analysis of these factors, you should be able to decide whether hedge ratio should be high or low. Moving on, locating the portfolio along the currency risk spectrum. So as I told you that currency, you can manage currency risk exposure, that is take risk or reduce risk, both are possible. So you can have a spectrum in which you are taking low risk or lowest risk, or you are taking highest risk. This will be towards managing actively, and this will be towards hedging or managing passively, that is tracking a benchmark. So passive hedging falls here, that is keeping the portfolio's currency exposure close if not equal to benchmark portfolio, not managing it actively at all. Then comes discretionary hedging. In discretionary hedging, you are again following a benchmark, but you have some discretion. That is, you can deviate from that benchmark, or you can manage some of the portfolio actively. So like for example, keeping 95% to 105 hedge ratio. That is, you can manage portfolio actively within this range. As long as hedge ratio is above 95 and below 105, you can make trades based on your discretion. This is discretionary hedging. Then comes active hedging. What is active hedging? Active hedging is a bit more risky compared to discretionary hedging. So it is between discretionary hedging and high risk hedging or extreme hedging. And what is this? The portfolio manager is allowed to express directional opinions on exchange rate, but capped within mandated risk limits. But risk limits are flexible compared to discretionary hedging, or wider compared to discretionary hedging. Controls are designed to prevent trades from taking unusually large currency exposure. So you will be taking currency exposure, but not unusually large. You will still have large exposure, but not unusually large. And after that comes speculative trading or speculative management, in which you are making trades based on speculation. If you are speculating a currency to go up, you will take a position in it. If you think that if you are speculating a currency to go down, you will take short position maybe, or you do not take a position in that currency. That is towards the extreme risk. So this is how you should be able. So based on your scenario and criteria, you should be able to decide where on the risk spectrum do you want to operate or manage your currency risk. Moving on to currency overlay. What is currency overlay? So currency overlay is a system in which you outsource so currency overlay is outsourcing the management of currency. And when would you engage into it? You will engage into it when you want to manage it actively, or when you want active management. So when you want active management, you would want expertise of investment manager. So in that case, you may want to outsource the active management to an investment manager or currency manager. That is known as currency overlay. This can have different forms. For example, a portfolio manager has outsourced managing currency exposure to a firm specializing in FX management, or allows the externally hired currency overlay manager to take directional views on future currency movement, or actively manage and optimize portfolio with respect to expected return, risk, and correlation among all of the currencies in the portfolio. So there can be different forms to it. The idea is that generally what you are doing is that you are outsourcing it to an investment manager. A possible strategy is that keeping portfolio fully hedged. That is, you are keeping a portfolio fully hedged, managing it at fully hedged, and you are adding an external currency overlay manager for active management. That is keeping a portion fully hedged, and for active management or for other portion, you are hiring an active currency manager. No matter whatever you do, whatever form you take, when you are hiring a manager, it will be necessary to monitor or benchmark the performance of currency overlay manager. Even if he is external or internal, you need to benchmark, you need to monitor, benchmark, and review the performance of overlay manager. So this is about locating the portfolio along the currency risk spectrum, that where do you want to operate, and based on the risk that you want to take, you will decide which kind of hedging do you want to use, or which kind of structure do you want to use. Next is formulating a client appropriate currency management program. That is formulating a program or formulating a currency management program that is appropriate for client, or that is based on the client needs. Strategic currency positioning of portfolio is biased toward a more fully hedged currency management program. So when you do a strategic currency positioning of portfolio, it might be biased towards fully hedged currency management program if portfolio has short-term investment objective. So if it has short-term objective, then you would want to keep it hedged. Why? Because you would want to avoid any short-term volatility risk in the currency. So hedge ratio will be higher. If portfolio's risk owners are risk averse, again you will want to keep hedge ratio as high. Income or liquidity needs are immediate. If you have immediate liquidity needs, you would want to keep hedge ratio high. Fixed income assets are held in foreign currency portfolio. You know that generally fixed income assets have high correlation with foreign exchange movement. So that means in order for you to hedge that risk of both falling together, you want to keep hedge ratio as high. Hedging program can be implemented cheaply. So if there are low costs, you would want to keep higher hedge ratio. Financial markets are volatile, again high risk, so high hedge ratio. Beneficial owners and or management oversight committee are skeptical of the expected benefits of active currency management. If you think that if management think there won't be benefits, then high hedge ratio. So this is how you decide whether hedge ratio should be high or low. Simply speaking, if risk is high, then you take high hedge ratio. If liquidity needs are high, then you take high hedge ratio. If correlation of asset and FX movement is high, then you keep high hedge ratio. If expectations are weak, then you take, again risk is high, and so you take high hedge ratio. If volatility is high, then that again means risk is high, and when risk is high, you take high hedge ratio. So this is how you decide on the hedge ratio. Any confusion so far in this topic? Okay. Moving on to next part, that is currency management tactical decision. So how do you take tactical? What is tactical as management, that you already know? How do you take tactical decisions? That is decision of deviating from strategic asset allocation for short term. That is a part of discussion here. So for taking tactical decisions, you should be able to forecast exchange rate movement. And the key point or concern is that there is no appropriate model or no appropriate formula, simple formula to forecast exchange rate movement. There are many models and all can give you different or conflicting results as well. And you cannot forecast exchange rate movement with high certainty. There is always a risk with respect to your forecast. But still there are strategies that you can use, or there are methods that you can use. So starting with first one, active currency management based on economic fundamentals. So you can forecast exchange rate movement with respect to economic fundamentals, that is with respect to economic factors. For example, one of the theories is that real exchange rate is the difference between nominal exchange rate and expected inflation. And the theory is that real exchange rate reflects the ratio of real purchasing power between two countries, and any differences in real exchange rate will be offset by the currency movement. So if you know that there is a high real sorry, this is real exchange rate, so this is nominal rate minus expected inflation. So the assumption is that if there is a real interest rate in a country that is high, then assumption is that this country will depreciate more, and eventually the real exchange real return considering the depreciation of currency would be the same from both the countries. Base currency's real exchange rate should appreciate if there is an upward movement in. So when would base currency go up, or when should the real exchange rate of base currency appropriate? When there is upward movement in long run equilibrium real exchange rate. If long run equilibrium exchange rate is going up, then short run exchange rate would also or may also go up. Either real or nominal interest rates are increasing. So when they increase, they would attract foreign capital. When they attract foreign capital, then currency will go up. Expected foreign inflation. If foreign inflation is expected, that means the currency of foreign market will turn weaker or will depreciate, and when it depreciates, your currency against that currency will appreciate. Foreign risk premium. If risk associated with foreign market is increasing, that means there will be less demand for foreign market asset, and when there is less demand for foreign market currency, it will depreciate and your currency will appreciate. So these are some factors that can cause real exchange rate to appreciate. So if you are given any factors, you should be able to identify whether they would cause an appreciation or a depreciation in the real exchange rate. Another way of forecasting, or another method tool of forecasting short-term movement with respect to economic fundamentals, is that generally it is assumed that there is a specific path that currency will follow, and if currency is rate is currently below that path, then it will appreciate, and if it is above that path, then it will depreciate. So there is a linear line that is fundamentally driven long run equilibrium path. So this is long run equilibrium path for exchange rate. If current exchange rate is above this, it will fall, and if it is below this, it will increase. This is another tool that you can use to forecast exchange rate, short term exchange rate movement based on the economic fundamental. So short term factors can impact your currency, and long term can also impact your currency. Long term factors that impact your long run equilibrium are based on fiscal and monetary policies, and short term factors that can lead to short term movements include nominal interest rate, expected inflation, and risk premium differentials. So this is how you can decide, or you can find out the movement in the currency in short term. Any confusion so far in this tactical decision? So let's take a, I think let's take a break here before we go further.